Mitigation methods. Did you know that an information technology control is a procedure or policy that provides a reasonable assurance that the information technology or IT used by an organization operates as intended, that the data is reliable, and that the organization is in compliance with applicable laws and regulations? On the other hand, a countermeasure is an action or method that is applied to prevent, avert, or reduce potential threats to computers, servers, networks, operating systems, OS, or information systems, IS. Countermeasure tools include antivirus software and firewalls. It is put into place to mitigate or reduce the potential risk. The three controls are as follows. Administrative security controls, also called procedural controls, are primarily procedures and policies which put into place to define and guide employee actions in dealing with the organization's sensitive information. Example, policies are on hiring practices, training, data classification. The next type of control is technical control. These are hardware and software controls used to provide automated protection to the information technology system or applications. Good examples, firewalls, biometrics, authentication systems, antivirus. Finally, the last type of control is a physical control. These are security measures that are designed to deny unauthorized access to facilities, equipment, and resources, and to protect personnel and property from damage or harm, such as espionage, theft, or terrorist attacks. Some points of these: fences, guards, closed-circuit TV. Let's talk about control types that are based on functionality. Deterrent controls. These are intended to discourage a potential attacker. Preventative. These are intended to avoid an incident from ever occurring. Corrective. These fix components or systems after an incident has occurred. Recovery. These are intended to bring the environment back to the regular operations or back from the situation. Detective. These help identify an incident's activities and potentially an intruder. And finally, compensating is to provide an alternative measure of control. Defense in depth is the act of using multiple security measures to protect the integrity of information. Its intent is to provide a redundancy in the event a security control fails or a vulnerability is exploited that can cover aspects of personnel, procedural, technical, or physical security situation for the duration of the system's life cycle. Defense in-depth architecture has multiple security controls that can be implemented depending on your organization's business strategy and objectives that can reduce the risk of cybersecurity incidents or events from mitigating the effects of these situations when they do occur. Identity management. This is the organizational process for identifying, authenticating, and authorizing individuals or groups of people to have access to applications, systems, or networks by associating user rights and restrictions with established identities. Identity management, also known as identity and access management, is, in computer security, the security and business discipline that enables the right individuals to access the right resources at the right times and for the right reasons. So what are the components of identity management? Authentication, authorization, user management and central user repository. Under identification and authentication, identification is the ability to identify uniquely a user of a system or an application that is running in the system. Authentication is the ability to prove that a user or application is genuinely who that person or what that application claims to be. Something you know, a password. Something you have, a token card. Something you are or do, a biometric feature. Where you are, location. Multi-factor authentication is an authentication method in which a computer user is granted access only after successfully presenting two or more pieces of evidence to an authentication mechanism. Two-factor authentication is a type or subset of multi-factor authentication. For example, a combination of more than one method, a token and a password or a PIN, a token and a biometric device. Authorization is the process of enforcing policies, determining what types of qualities of activities, resources, or services a user is permitted. Authorization determines whether the user has the authority to issue commands. Usually, authorization occurs within the context of authentication. Once you have authenticated a user, they may be authorized for different types of access or activity. Accountability is the traceability of actions performed on a system to a specific system entity, for example, users, processes, devices. For example, the use of a unique user identification and authentication supports accountability. The use of a shared user ID and password destroys accountability. Auditing. An audit is a manual or systematic, measurable technical assessment of a system or application. Manual assessments include interviewing staff, performing security vulnerability scans, reviewing applications and operating systems access controls, and analyzing physical access to the systems. Monitoring involves collecting and analyzing information to detect suspicious behavior or unauthorized system changes on your network, defining which types of behavior should trigger alerts, and taking actions to mitigate. Patch management is an area of systems management that involves acquiring, testing, and installing multiple patches or code changes to an administered computer system. Patch management tasks are things like maintaining current knowledge of available patches, deciding what patches are appropriate for particular systems, ensuring that patches are installed properly, testing systems after installation, documenting all associated procedures such as specific configurations required. Please note that famous WannaCry ransomware was able to spread to such a large extent and cause damage because a patch, which could have been fixed, was missing on the system and not applied at the appropriate time. System hardening is a collection of tools, techniques, and best practices to reduce vulnerability in technology applications, systems, infrastructure, firmware, and other areas. System hardening is the process of eliminating as many security risks as possible. Hardening is the process of securing a system by reducing its attack surface. Hardening activities for a computer system can include keeping security patches and hotfixes updated, monitoring security bulletins that are applicable to a system's operating system and applications, closing certain ports such as server ports, not allowing file sharing among programs, installing virus and spyware protection, including an anti-adware tool that malicious software cannot gain access to the computer on which it is installed, creating strong passwords, removing unnecessary programs and user accounts from the computer, using encryption where possible. Let's talk about change control. This is a systematic approach to managing all changes made to a product or system. The purpose is to ensure that no unnecessary changes are made, that all changes are documented, and that services are not unnecessarily disrupted and resources are used efficiently. Change control flow goes from the change request to the formal request for change, to a change approval board, to implementation, review, and finally, possible rollback Assets include all elements of software and hardware that are found in the business environment. It is a process which is used to record and track an asset throughout its life cycle, from procurement to disposal. In the asset inventory management life cycle, we go from a procurement to a deployment and discover to a maintain, we support, and then eventually when the asset has neared its end of life cycle, we retire and dispose. Data is the smallest piece of information in any form. Computer data is information processed or stored by a computer. This information may be in the form of text documents, images, audio clips, software programs, or other types of data. Data management is an administrative process that includes acquiring, validating, storing, protecting, processing required data to ensure that accessibility, reliability, and timeliness of the data for its users. The states of data describes the different modes whereby data is used by computing equipment. There are a total of 3 basic data states: data at rest, data in transit, and data in use. Data at rest. This generally refers to data in a database or file that functions as a system, application, user, or backup data. Data in transit. Data that is being sent over a network or a local transfer between devices. Data in use. Data that has been pulled into memory or that is currently being processed. Information. Life cycle. First, we acquire it. We copy or create. We get system data and business process data are attached. Information is indexed. We deal with the use of the data. This presents the most challenge in protection. Archival. It's important to decide on the needs for backup and how they're going to be protected. Need to decide on the retention period, days, weeks, months, years, sometimes infinite. Disposal. How are we going to get rid of the data? Data is indeed destroyed. We got to make sure it is. It is destroyed correctly. How and where is it stored for critical destruction? This is an ongoing process and not a one-time effort. The important metadata item that should be attached to all information is at the right classification level. The classification level should always be attached throughout the life cycle of the information. This helps indicate the level of protection that is needed for each type of data. And finally, helps ensure data is protected in a most cost-effective manner. Let's talk about encryption. Encryption is the process of converting data to an unrecognizable or encrypted form. It is commonly used to protect sensitive information. It is considered a science of protecting information by encoding it into an unreadable format. Encryption is converting plain text messages into secure coded text, otherwise known as ciphertext. This is done via a mathematical function and a key, a special encryption/decryption password. Application. This protects data in transit over our networks. It protects information stored on computers. It deters and detects alterations of the data. And it verifies the authenticity of a transaction or document. Cryptography is a method of storing and transmitting data in a form that only those it is intended for can read and process. It is considered a science of protecting information by encoding it into an unreadable format. Cryptography involves creating written or generated codes that allow information to be kept secret. Cryptography converts data into a format that is unreadable for an unauthorized user, allowing it to be transmitted without unauthorized entities decoding it back into a readable format, thus compromising the data. Effective encryption systems depend on algorithm strength, secrecy, and difficulty of compromising a key. the non-existence of backdoors by which an encrypted file can be decrypted without knowing the key, and the inability to decrypt an entire ciphertext message. Types of encryption: symmetric and asymmetric encryption. Symmetric encryption is based on the same key or private key to encrypt plain text and decrypt ciphertext. The advantage: one key to encrypt and decrypt. It uses less processing power. Disadvantage: getting the key to those you want to exchange the data with. And finally, data encryption standard, or DES, is 64-bit, and advanced encryption standard, AES, is 128-bit to 256-bit. Asymmetric encryption. This system uses different keys for encrypting and decrypting a message. It solves the problem of getting the key to those you want to exchange the data with. One is used to encrypt and the other is used to decrypt. One key is secret, private, is known only to one person. The other key is the public key, and this is known to many people. Some of the services of cryptography. Authentication: if I encrypt with the sender's secret key, then it's a private key. If somebody can decrypt it with my public key, it had to come from me. Non-repudiation: I cannot refute that it came from me. Confidentiality: if I encrypt with the receiver's public key, the only person that can decrypt it is the receiver with their private key. Incident response: it is an organized approach to addressing and managing the aftermath of a security breach or cyber attack, also known as an IT incident, computer incident, or security incident. Incident response goals: to handle the situation in a way that limits the damage and reduces recovery time and costs, managing any disruption or potential disruption to live IT service. Normal service operation stays within the service level agreements. You minimize the adverse impact on business operations. Security training: it is an organized approach to addressing and managing the aftermath of a security breach or cyber attack. Security awareness: it is the process of exposing people to security issues so that they may be able to recognize them and better respond to them.